By 1955, 64% of American working adults ate lunch at a counter at least 3 days a week, and most ordered from the same 6 sandwiches in rotation. The counters were inside Woolworths, Walgreens, Liggett's, and Schrafft's. The cooks worked behind a porcelain rail. The plates landed in under 3 minutes. Number 17 on this list was the sandwich your grandfather ordered without looking at the menu. Number 11 was invented by a Louisville hotel chef at midnight to feed 1,200 dinner dance guests who would not go home. Number 3 on this list took a turkey, a ham, and 3 slices of toast, and somehow read as luxury. And these 25 sandwiches were not just lunch. They were the architecture of an American afternoon. Tap subscribe. There's plenty more like this. Counting down now. 25 lunch counter sandwiches from the 1950s that vanished forever. Number 25. Egg salad on white. Spreading egg salad using the rounded side of a spoon was the very first lesson a new waitress got at the rail. Knives were not allowed for this. 4 hard-boiled eggs, 2 tablespoons of mayonnaise, a pinch of celery salt, and a paper-thin slice of green pepper if you felt fancy. The bread was always white, always sliced thin, like a paper napkin folded around the filling. Waitresses cut sandwiches into triangles and stacked them on plates lined with leaf lettuce. Eaten standing at the rail in under 11 minutes. The dime store counters quietly closed. The drugstore lunchrooms closed. The sandwich went with them. Your grandmother could still make one by feel. Most of her grandchildren cannot. Number 24. Liverwurst on rye with raw onion. The smell hit you before you saw the plate, like wet leather and pepper, and the bite of raw onion came right behind. Boar's Head sliced the loaf thick at every Liggett's drugstore in Brooklyn through the 50s. The counterman layered it on seeded rye with a sharp ring of yellow onion, a smear of brown mustard, and a single dill spear set off to the side. The sandwich was loud. The onion bit. The mustard cut through. The liverwurst itself was soft, a dusky pink paste of pork liver and fat that the immigrant butchers in Yorkville had been making for 30 years before it ever reached the rail. You could eat one standing up in 4 minutes and walk back to the shop full of it. But the kids would not eat organ meats anymore by 1975. The doctors were warning about cholesterol. By 2024, Boar's Head stopped making liverwurst entirely. There was a generation of countercooks who could trim a liverwurst loaf in their sleep, and there is no one left now to teach the next one how. Number 23. Olive nut on white toast. Stirring cream cheese soft with the back of a fork was how the recipe started. Chopped green olives with the pimento still in them, and toasted black walnuts, all folded until the mixture turned pale yellow, flecked with red and brown. Spread on white toast and cut diagonally. The sandwich showed up in every Better Homes and Gardens cookbook for 15 years and then quietly disappeared. Cream cheese moved on to bagels. Olives moved on to martinis. The black walnuts went the hardest because nobody was harvesting them anymore. The olive nut was simple and beautiful in an odd way, like a tea party leftover that the working world had borrowed for an hour. Now you can go a year of eating in restaurants and never once see one on a plate. Number 22. Welsh rarebit on toast. The sauce was the whole sandwich. Sharp cheddar melted with milk, beer, dry mustard, and a few drops of Worcestershire, poured thick over a slab of toasted white loaf and slid under the broiler until the top went gold. You could eat it with a fork. The lunch rail kept a small saucepan of it warm and stirred. A trucker could order Welsh rarebit, eat it like a hot lunch with coffee, and be on the road by 1:15. The sandwich required a real sauce, and the sauce required someone behind the rail who could pay attention. As the counters moved to faster food, Welsh rarebit was the earliest item to vanish from the slate. Nobody was asking for it anyway. Number 21. Banana mayonnaise on white. The first bite tasted wrong and right in the same instant. Sweet banana, salty mayonnaise, soft white bread. The mayonnaise was Duke's. The bananas were green-tipped, sliced thin, laid in a single overlapping layer. A sprinkle of salted peanuts on top when the jar held some. The sandwich was a Southern staple long before the Depression, like so many of the things this country eats without questioning. The bread was buttered on the outside on hot days to keep the slices from going slimy. The lunch counters that served it widely are gone now. The sandwich is still eaten in pockets across the Deep South. Most never try it. They are missing something honest. Number 20. Underwood Deviled Ham on Rye. Peeling back that red foil tin was the sound of a lunchbox opening from 1922 through about 1968. The tin held a paste of finely ground ham, mustard, vinegar, and spices that the William Underwood Company had been selling out of New England since 1868. You scooped 2 tablespoons onto rye, pressed a second slice on top, and cut diagonally. The tin had a small red devil on the label that had not changed in 50 years. It was the oldest registered trademark on a food product in the country. Mothers packed deviled ham sandwiches in metal pails for steel mill shifts and for school because the paste held up through a 6-hour day in any weather. But the kids called it pink mush by the 70s, and the doctors said the salt was too high. The deviled ham sandwich went to ground, and the small red devil on the tin became the only thing about it most Americans remembered. Number 19. Cottage cheese on date nut bread. Slicing the bread out of a tin can was the strange small ritual at the start. Thomas's and B&M both sold dense, dark, sweet date nut loaves shaped exactly to the can, and the cook sliced thick and never toasted. Cottage cheese went on cold, a generous scoop of small curd, lightly salted, with 1 thin round of canned pineapple on top. The sandwich was strange and beautiful, like an afternoon dressed up just enough to feel like an event you had not earned but were grateful for. You could order it at Schraft's with a glass of iced tea, and the waitress would set it down on a paper doily. It was on every Schraft's menu for 20 years, and it disappeared the year Schraft's itself began to close stores. The date nut bread in a can went out of production at B&M in 1992. Women in their 80s still remember the exact taste, and there is no place left that will make it for them. Number 18. Watercress with butter. Trimming the crusts with a wet knife was how the small ceremony started. The bread was crustless white, paper thin, spread with sweet butter from end to end. Watercress went on rinsed and picked over, laid in a dense green carpet that almost glowed against the white. A second slice pressed on top, the sandwich cut into 4 neat triangles on a paper doily. A department store clerk on her lunch break, a teacher on a 40-minute window, a Saturday shopper into the city. All of them could order one and feel the day had been a small occasion. The watercress trade was supplied by a handful of farms, and as those farms shrank, the sandwich shrank with them. The tea sandwich tradition is mostly gone now, and watercress with butter went with it. Number 17. Tongue on rye with mustard. The slice was 1/4 inch thick, fanned across the rye in 3 overlapping pieces, topped with a smear of horseradish and a single round of yellow mustard. Beef tongue was cheap at the wholesale market on 14th Street, simmered for 4 hours with onions and bay leaves, peeled while still warm, and sliced cold on the bias. A tongue sandwich was 35 cents at Katz's in 1956. The flavor was rich and beefy, the texture more tender than brisket ever reached. The sandwich held its place on Jewish deli counters and corner luncheonettes through the late 70s. And then beef prices dropped. The immigrant generation aged out. The kids stopped ordering it. Katz's still serves it. Almost nobody else does. Your grandfather knew the rail cook by his first name, and the rail cook knew which mustard he wanted before he sat down. Number 16. Tuna melt. A short order rail, one hot afternoon in 1959, tipped a bowl of tuna salad onto a half-grilled cheese sandwich and decided to keep going. The whole thing got pressed flat on the griddle and slid onto the plate. The customer asked for another. Within 3 years, the tuna melt was on lunch rails everywhere. Tuna salad on rye or sourdough, a single slice of cheese on top, a slick of butter on the griddle, heavy press for roughly 2 minutes each side. The cheese melted down into the tuna, the bread browned, the whole thing came off hot and a little messy. The fast food kitchens replaced the press with a panini machine, and the panini machine turned the tuna melt into something tighter and drier and entirely less interesting than the original. By the way, if any of these sandwiches sound like one your mother used to fix at home, I put together a recipe guide that walks through more like them: the proportions, the bread choices, the right way to cut a sandwich on the diagonal, and the small kitchen tricks the counter cooks use to keep the lettuce crisp and the bacon hot through a 6-hour shift. The link is just below. Number 15. Sloppy Joe Manhattan Style. The Sloppy Joe you remember from a school cafeteria tray was not the original. The original was a triple-decker deli sandwich invented at the Town Hall Deli in South Orange, New Jersey, in the early 1930s and adopted by Manhattan lunch counters by 1948. 3 slices of seeded rye, 2 layers of thinly sliced corned beef and Swiss, a layer of coleslaw, and a coat of Russian dressing between the layers. The whole sandwich was cut into quarters and pinned with toothpicks like a small flag held the thing together. You could eat one in 5 minutes and walk back to the office full. The deli claimed the recipe came home from a politician's vacation in Havana, where the bartender at a place called Sloppy Joe's served something similar with rum on the side. The story is more legend than history at this point, but the deli still tells it on the wall. The loose meat ground beef version came later out of Sioux City, Iowa, and took over the name by the late 40s. Articles about the cafeteria tray version were everywhere by 1957. One thing I noticed reading old menus is that the Manhattan version was always called Sloppy Joe with a capital, never Sloppy Joe lowercase, as if the name was a proper restaurant title. Most Americans today have no idea there were 2 completely different sandwiches called the same thing. The Manhattan one was better. Number 14. SOS, chipped beef gravy over toast. Soldiers had 3 letters for it, and your grandfather knew all 3. The polite version was, "Save our souls." Every American diner counter ran it on the breakfast menu from 1948 through about 1972. Dried beef, rinsed of salt, simmered in a quick milk and butter gravy that the rail thickened with a pinch of flour, then ladled hot over a stack of buttered white toast. Veterans of the Second World War had eaten the same dish thrice weekly in mess halls overseas, and when they came home, they wanted it on a plate around dawn before the morning shift kicked off. It was 40 cents at a Pittsburgh diner in 1955. The coffee was a dime. The plate came hot, the gravy thick, the beef salty and chewy in a way that woke a man up like a slap on the cheek. A trucker could finish 2 plates and a black coffee in 15 minutes flat and be on the road before sunrise. The dish disappeared as the diners themselves disappeared, as the McDonald's drive-thrus took over the breakfast trade. Your grandfather could still make a perfect one at home. Most cooks under 50 have never heard the name. Number 13. Ham salad on white. Tuesday was ham salad day on Midwestern lunch counters from 1949 through about 1979. The cook ran Sunday's leftover ham through a hand grinder, watched it come out in a pink rope, and mixed it with mayonnaise, sweet pickle relish, a chopped hard-boiled egg, and a pinch of dry mustard. He spread it thick on white bread, cut it in half, and served it with potato chips and a dill spear. A Kresge's in Cleveland sold ham salad on white for 30 cents in 1958. A Woolworth's in Indianapolis charged 28 cents. A working family of 4 could stretch the same ham across an entire week, fresh on Sunday, sliced on Monday, ground into salad on Tuesday. The cook's grocery bill ran $1.50 for the week's protein. The dressing got Tangier each day as the relish bled into the mayo, and Friday's sandwich tasted nothing like Tuesday's. By the 80s, the hand grinder went into the back of the cabinet. The cooks bought pre-made ham salad in plastic tubs, and the tubs went stale on the shelf. The Sunday leftover version is gone. Number 12. Pimento cheese on rye. At Augusta National in 1947, a couple named the Herndons sold pimento cheese sandwiches on the course for 25 cents apiece, and the recipe spread from there to every drugstore counter in the South within a decade. The mix was sharp cheddar, grated coarse, jarred pimentos drained and chopped, mayonnaise, a pinch of cayenne, and black pepper, all stirred until the orange paste held together but still showed the red flecks. You ate it on rye, white, or pumpernickel, cold, with a sweet pickle and a glass of sweet tea. A Walgreens in Atlanta listed pimento cheese on rye for 30 cents in 1955. A Liggett's in Charlotte ran a Saturday special at 20. The pimento cheese sandwich has held on better than most on this list. Even so, The drugstore counter version is gone. The lunch counters that built their reputation on this sandwich were inside Woolworth stores that desegregated in 1960 after 4 students sat down and refused to leave for 5 months running. The counters kept their stools through 1993 and then closed for good. The sandwich outlived the counter that made it famous, which is the strangest small monument the food world has. Number 11. Hot Brown. Imagine you are a hotel chef in Louisville in 1926, working a dinner dance that has brought 1,200 guests through the doors of the Brown Hotel and will not let them leave. His name was Fred K. Schmidt, and he had 30 minutes to feed everyone. By midnight, the dancers wanted a 4th meal, and he did not have time to plate ham and eggs for 1,200 people individually. So he laid open-faced slices of toasted white bread on a sheet pan, fanned roasted turkey breast across them, draped 2 strips of bacon over each, ladled a thick Mornay sauce made from butter, flour, milk, parmesan, and a dash of nutmeg poured generously across the bread, and slid the pan under the broiler. The cheese bubbled, the bacon crisped, the toast browned at the edges. He plated each one with 2 halved tomatoes alongside, and the guests fell on it. Within a year, 95% of the hotel's customers ordered nothing else. The part that really surprised me digging into the records is that he served it with 2 halved tomatoes on the plate, never one, a small thing nobody mentions in the modern recipes. The grilled tomato halves cut the richness of the Mornay and reset your palate between bites. By 1948, every drugstore counter in the South had a version. The Hot Brown was a cousin of Welsh rarebit, but it had a turkey under the cheese, and that made it American. The dish required a real Mornay sauce, a real broiler, and a cook who could time the bubble like a kitchen version of a magician's reveal. As the counters cut staff in the 70s, it went off most menus. The Brown Hotel still serves the original. A handful of Louisville restaurants still serve the original. Outside Kentucky, you can drive across the country for a week and never see one listed. Your grandmother in Bowling Green could tell you exactly which restaurant did it best because she had eaten her way down the list of them in 1957. Number 10. Patty Melt. A coffee shop owner on Sunset Boulevard named Tiny Naylor put the first one on a menu in the late 1940s, and within 5 years it had crossed onto diner counters across the country. A thin ground beef patty seared on the chrome griddle, 2 slices of caramelized onion, 2 slices of Swiss, the whole thing pressed between buttered rye and grilled until the cheese ran in a slow river off the edges of the rye. You could turn one out in 4 minutes. Tiny's chain ran the sandwich for 50 cents in 1955, and the regulars came back twice a week for it. The onion was the trick, caramelized slow before the patty went down, sweet enough to balance the meat and dark enough to almost burn at the bottom. And then, the burger chains pulled the lunch counter trade away in the 70s. Most Americans today still know the name, but they have never had one made on a real chrome griddle by a cook who knew how to time it. The chain version is a different sandwich entirely. The lunch counter version is gone. Number 9. Cream cheese and olive. Beating the cream cheese soft with the tines of a fork was the only real skill the sandwich asked of you. The brand was Philadelphia, the olives were green with pimentos, the bread was always white. Chopped olives folded in until the spread turned pale green flecked with red. Spread thick on 2 slices of crustless bread, cut into 4 small triangles on a paper doily. The flavor was cool and salty and a little tangy, like a martini olive flattened into a quiet noon meal. The bread soaked up the cream cheese the longer the plate sat. The counters dropped it for faster things. It became a thing made at home for a luncheon, then a thing nobody made, and now it is a thing almost nobody makes at all. Number 8. Salami on a Kaiser roll. Slicing Genoa salami a 1/4 inch thick was the rule the Italian-American counterman never broke, and they would tell you so if you asked. 6 rounds went onto a fresh Kaiser roll, 2 thin slices of provolone slid in behind, and the cook finished with a slick of olive oil, a pinch of dried oregano, and a paper-thin slice of red onion. The roll was crusty, the meat was peppery, the cheese sharp. The whole sandwich cost 40 cents at a Bronx delicatessen in 1953. A working man on a lunch break from the garment district could grab one at the rail, drink a cream soda, and head back to his sewing machine in 12 minutes. The salami on a Kaiser was on every Italian-American counter from Boston to Newark to Chicago through about 1975. And then the trade thinned out. The Kaiser rolls got smaller and softer, the meat went pre-sliced and shrink-wrapped, like a sandwich slowly losing its accent over 3 generations. There are corner places in the Bronx that still cut it the right way. Most American counters lost the sandwich and never put it back. Number 7. Bacon and tomato on toast. BLT did not get its 3 letters until the late 1950s, when waitresses started calling the order short to save time. Before that, the sandwich was bacon and tomato on toast, served at every drugstore counter in America from 1939 onward. 4 crisp bacon strips fried hot, laid across 2 pieces of toasted white, thin slices of beefsteak tomato in season, 1 crisp iceberg leaf, and a heavy slick of Hellmann's mayo. The bacon had to be hot, the tomato had to be ripe, the toast had to be browned but not dried out. A cook in August knew that the tomato was the whole sandwich, like the way a song depends on one note nobody talks about. A tomato out of a hothouse in February was not the same thing. The cheap fast food version flattened it. Most Americans have eaten a BLT, most have not eaten a real one. Number 6. Denver sandwich. A syndicated column in 1959 called the Denver the most popular named sandwich in America, and the lunch counters in every state proved it true. A small omelet of 2 beaten eggs with diced ham, diced green pepper, and diced onion in equal measure, all flipped on the griddle until the eggs set, then folded inside a buttered white toast pocket. You could turn one out in 3 minutes. The sandwich cost 40 cents at a Walgreens in Denver in 1955 and fed a working man through a 4-hour stretch. The truckers ordered it. The cowhands ordered it. The county clerks ordered it on Friday afternoons before they drove home. Some say a Chinese railroad cook had been making something like it for 50 years before anyone in Denver took the credit. And the egg foo young theory has more weight than the official histories admit. By the 80s, the bread quietly fell off. The omelet stayed, only now it sat on a plate with hash browns, like the meal had taken off its hat and stayed for the longer conversation. The road trip diner where you ordered one at the rail and finished it in 5 minutes is gone. Number 5. Monte Cristo. The Monte Cristo was first written down in an American restaurant trade paper in 1923, and by the early 50s it had crossed from California hotel kitchens onto lunch counter griddles in every state. 3 pieces of white bread, 2 layers of sliced ham, 2 layers of sliced turkey, 2 slices of Swiss, the whole stack dipped in a beaten egg and milk batter and fried in butter on a hot griddle surface until the outside turned golden brown and a little crackly at the corners. A dusting of powdered sugar went on top. A ramekin of strawberry jam went on the side. The Brown Derby in Hollywood served it at lunch. The Hotel del Coronado in San Diego served it. By 1966, it was on the menu at Disneyland. The home cook could not really make one. The bread had to be dipped fast and fried hot. The window between soft and crisp was about 90 seconds. Miss it, and the bread soaked through. Catch it, and the diner forgot every other sandwich on the menu. A wet batter and a cool griddle made a soggy mess that nobody finished. The Monte Cristo is still findable at a few diners, but the lunch counter version, golden and crisp and dusted with sugar, is mostly gone. Number 4. Cucumber and butter on white. Chilling the buttered bread first was the trick learned by accident. Otherwise, the butter soaked through and the sandwich went limp. The cucumber went on in paper-thin rounds, salted lightly, drained on a clean cloth for 10 minutes, then layered 3 deep on the bread. The crusts came off with a wet knife. The sandwich got cut into 4 small fingers and arranged on a plate with a sprig of mint. The flavor was cool, almost no flavor at all, and that was the point. On a hot afternoon with iced tea, eating it became a small mercy nobody had asked for and everybody welcomed. The tea sandwich tradition retreated to wedding showers and church teas. There are no lunch rails anywhere serving it now. Number 3. Manhattan Club. Pinning the 4 triangles with frilled toothpicks was the small ceremony that finished the sandwich. The Manhattan Club lived on the menu of every hotel, coffee shop, and lunch counter in the country through the 1950s, from the Plaza in New York to the Brown Palace in Denver. It was what a man ordered when he wanted to feel he had spent his money well. 3 pieces of toasted white bread, a layer of sliced roast turkey breast, 3 strips of crisp bacon, leaf lettuce, 1 fat round of beefsteak tomato, mayonnaise laid heavy on every slice. A Schrafft's in Manhattan sold the club for 65 cents in 1956. The dish arrived with potato chips, a dill spear, and a small ramekin of coleslaw. The sandwich was difficult to eat without losing a tomato, like a small puzzle the diner was meant to enjoy losing. By the 70s, the chain sandwich shops took over the name. The bread got soft, the bacon got thin, and the original Manhattan version went to the few remaining hotel coffee shops. Most Americans today have eaten a club sandwich. Almost none have eaten a real one. Number 2. Cuban press. Cuban sandwiches arrived on American lunch counters through the cigar factory neighborhoods of Tampa and Ybor City in the early 1900s, and by the early 1950s, a New York version had crossed onto Manhattan deli counters. A length of crusty Cuban bread, yellow mustard brushed onto both halves, a layer of roast pork that had been slow-cooked overnight, a layer of sliced ham, 2 slices of Swiss, 4 dill pickle chips laid end to end. No lettuce, no tomato, no mayonnaise. The whole stack got loaded into a heavy iron press for 3 minutes until the bread flattened to half its height and the cheese ran out the sides like the sandwich was sweating from the heat. A Cuban press at a midtown deli ran 55 cents around 1958. The Tampa version had salami in the layers. The Manhattan counter version dropped the salami and held closer to the Havana original. The Cuban press is still findable in Florida and parts of New Jersey. The Manhattan lunch counter Cuban is gone, and the cigar factory neighborhoods that brought it to the American lunch trade are gone with it. Number 1. Reuben on rye. Steaming the corned beef warm before it ever touched the bread was the first rule, and the second rule was you never skip the first. Every Jewish deli counter and every drugstore lunch counter in America ran the Reuben from about 1948 through 1980. The bread was seeded rye. The corned beef was sliced from the brisket on a hot table behind the counter. Sauerkraut went on hot, drained but not pressed dry. 2 slices of Swiss melted under the broiler. A spread of Russian dressing went on both slices. The whole sandwich got pressed flat on a buttered griddle for 4 minutes, then split on the diagonal and served with a half-sour pickle and a small mound of coleslaw. A Reuben at a New York deli was 50 cents in 1956. The corned beef had to be warm, the kraut hot but not soggy, the rye toasted but not dried out. And a cook who could not get all 4 right did not last a month behind the rail. The Reuben on most modern menus is a different sandwich entirely. The corned beef is too cold. The kraut is too dry. The bread is too soft. The original lunch counter version, hot and pressed and dripping a little as if the sandwich were quietly weeping about something it could not name, was the closing plate on an American afternoon, and the afternoon is over. There is nothing tidy about a sloppy Joe, and that is the whole point. These school cafeteria icons had one mission: to hit like a flavor bomb and leave a trail behind. Tangy ground beef cooked with tomato paste, onions, and whatever seasoning the lunch lady felt like using that day. Scooped in a steaming pile onto soft hamburger buns that were usually a little too small. You would take one bite, and the filling would slide out the other side like it was trying to escape. Your hands? Covered. Your tray? A disaster. Your smile? Huge. They were sweet, salty, savory, and just chaotic enough to make lunch feel like a party. Even the name sounded like something you should not be allowed to say in class. Sloppy Joes were not reserved for fancy moments. They were served with plastic forks and half a chocolate milk carton. But they became legendary. Maybe it was because they tasted like comfort food mixed with rebellion. Or maybe it was just the fact that no one ever got through one without needing extra napkins. Either way, it earned its place in the Sandwich Hall of Fame. But what if I told you there was a sandwich out there that combined egg, gravy, and a hamburger bun, and somehow made it work? Hot Browns were not just sandwiches, they were events. Hailing from Louisville, Kentucky, the Hot Brown was the kind of school lunch you did not expect to see in your lunchbox. But when you did, everything else faded away. It was open-faced, built on toasted bread, and layered with turkey bacon and a thick, rich mayonnaise sauce that made it feel like something that belonged in a fancy hotel, not the corner of a cafeteria tray. The whole thing was broiled until bubbly, golden, and just messy enough to feel indulgent. It smelled like home. It tasted like someone had really tried. Most kids stared at it, confused. But for those who knew what they were looking at, it was heaven. Each bite was creamy, salty, and warm, something between comfort food and special occasion. You ate it with a fork, or tried to. It was not meant to be neat. It was meant to fill you up and slow you down. Today, you will find them in restaurants, dressed up and modernized. But nothing hits like the homemade version packed with love. The mashed potato sandwich is one of those unassuming comfort foods that became a staple for many families during hard times. When there wasn't much in the pantry, leftover mashed potatoes provided a quick and filling solution. The sandwich itself was simple. Just a hearty serving of mashed potatoes spread between two slices of bread. While it might sound basic, the potatoes brought both substance and satisfaction, especially when other food options were limited. The mashed potatoes could be enhanced with black pepper or a drizzle of gravy if you were lucky enough to have it, adding a little extra flavor to what was essentially a very simple dish. The real beauty of the mashed potato sandwich was its versatility. If you had no other ingredients, it could still make a fulfilling meal. It was also a great way to use up leftovers from a previous meal, turning a side dish into the main course. This sandwich wasn't about gourmet flavors or complex ingredients. It was about being resourceful and making the most out of what you had. For many, it was an affordable, easy way to stretch meals further, especially when money was tight. The mashed potato sandwich might not have been the most glamorous option, but it was a meal that served its purpose well. And while it might seem simple, the next sandwich on our list takes leftovers and transforms them into a surprisingly hearty option. Imagine being 8 years old and opening your lunchbox to find chopped olive and cream cheese on pumpernickel. Either your mom was ahead of her time or she found an old cocktail recipe card and just went with it. This sandwich was salty, tangy, creamy, and somehow kind of grown up. You had green olives chopped so fine they could sneak into your taste buds before your brain caught on, mixed with cream cheese until it was a spread so thick it stuck to the knife like it had a mission. All of that smeared onto a slice of deep, dark pumpernickel that practically demanded you respect it. It was not flashy, it was not sweet, and no kid was trading their cookie for it. But it had an edge, the kind of flavor that got better the more you chewed. Somewhere along the way, this party appetizer snuck into lunchboxes, Tupperware, and even a few kitchen counters at 2 in the morning. It was strange, but it made sense. The 70s were weird like that. Spreads were suddenly sandwiches and finger food was fair game. Of course, if you thought cold spreads were wild, wait until you see what happens when tuna salad goes face-to-face with a broiler. Ham salad sandwiches were what you made when dinner became tomorrow's lunch. And nothing went to waste. Chopped leftover ham mixed with mayonnaise, a spoonful of relish, and maybe a dash of mustard turned into something far greater than the sum of its parts. The result was creamy, salty, tangy, and just textured enough to let you know this was not store-bought. It sat heavy on white bread and came wrapped in wax paper or pressed gently into a sandwich bag that stuck to the crust by lunch hour. Kids either loved ham salad or politely declined the swap. It had presence. A slightly chunky spread with pink edges and flecks of green. Grandparents swore by it. Cafeterias served it weekly, and for a long time, it was a way to turn leftovers into something that felt brand new. It was a lunchbox classic for those raised with one hand on the cutting board and the other on the budget. Today, it rarely shows up in modern school lunches, replaced by prepackaged options and flashier flavors. If you've never tried a raw onion sandwich, it's one of those meals that'll stick with you, for better or worse. Sliced raw onions, slathered with a bit of mustard or mayo, tucked between 2 slices of bread. It wasn't gourmet, but it was a working man's lunch that packed a punch. Onions were cheap, easy to store, and filled you up. The mustard or mayo added some tang and creaminess, but the star of the show was the onion. Not only was it a strong-flavored, inexpensive option, but it was also a great way to keep your hunger at bay until your next meal. Though its pungent scent often lingered long after the meal was finished, it didn't matter when food was scarce. For many families, raw onion sandwiches were a quick fix that provided the sustenance they needed to get through the day. But if you think this is as bold as it gets, just wait until you hear about the next sandwich. Now this one had drama. The tuna boat melt was not just a sandwich, it was an event. You start with a sub roll, soft in the middle, split open like it is waiting for a miracle. In goes a scoop of tuna salad, but not the watery kind. This was chunky, mayo-rich, maybe with a little celery if you were lucky. Then come the tomato slices, thin, juicy, and laid down like armor. And finally, cheddar cheese, shredded, sliced, whatever worked, blanketing the whole thing like a warm hug. Slide the whole sandwich under a broiler and wait. That is the moment things change. The edges of the bread crisp up, the cheese bubbles and browns, and the tomato softens just enough to soak into the tuna. You pull it out just in time to stop it from burning, but almost wish it had. This was the sandwich version of comfort food theater. It smelled like warmth. It looked like golden perfection. It tasted like something way fancier than it was. Parents made it to use up tuna, but kids remembered it like a feast. But if this one was golden, wait until you meet the sandwich that vanished from lunch counters just as fast as it appeared. The chow mein sandwich was chaos held together by two buns, and somehow it worked. Born in southeastern Massachusetts, this Frankenstein creation placed a mound of crispy chow mein noodles smothered in thick brown gravy between two hamburger buns. The result was a crunchy, savory, totally illogical meal that became a school lunch staple in some corners of the country. Kids would unwrap their foil-wrapped mystery and find a puddle of sauce and starch that somehow filled every craving and left fingers coated in grease. This was the kind of sandwich you could not eat neatly, and that was half the fun. The noodles poked out the sides, the sauce soaked into the bread, and no two bites were ever the same. The chow mein sandwich was a lunchtime dare wrapped in cultural mashup, a reminder that not all great foods make perfect sense on paper. Over time, regional oddities like this one gave way to standardization. One bite, and you were somewhere between comfort food and total confusion. And somehow that felt exactly right. The lard and salt sandwich is one of those meals that perfectly embodies the ingenuity and resilience of families during the Great Depression, when food was scarce and every penny had to stretch. It was as simple as it sounds, just bread, lard, and a generous sprinkle of salt. The lard, which was a cheap and readily available source of fat, provided the sandwich with richness and moisture, while the salt helped enhance the flavor, making it more palatable. While it may not have been fancy, the lard and salt sandwich was a practical and filling option when other food was out of reach. Bread was often the most affordable ingredient, and lard was something many households had on hand, especially those who lived on farms where pigs were raised for their meat. This sandwich wasn't about gourmet dining. It was about making do with what was available. Despite the lack of variety, it kept hunger at bay and provided some much-needed energy during a time when food options were limited. It was a meal that could be whipped up quickly and was surprisingly satisfying. Though it may seem unappealing today, the lard and salt sandwich was an essential part of survival for many families. It's a reminder of how people used their resourcefulness to make meals out of the most basic ingredients. And while lard and salt might have filled many bellies, the next sandwich on our list brings together a different combination of simple ingredients to create a surprisingly satisfying meal. Now we are talking classic. Corned beef and coleslaw on seeded rye is one of those sandwiches that knew how to make an entrance without raising its voice. You would find it wrapped in wax paper at your local deli, or sitting proud on a tray next to a pickle spear and a bag of chips. The corned beef was thin sliced, but packed with punch, salty, tender, and just fatty enough to remind you this was not diet food. Then came the slaw. Not too creamy, not too dry, with just the right crunch to cut through the richness of the meat. Pile that high between two slices of seeded rye, sturdy, peppery, with that classic bite, and you had something special. This was the kind of sandwich that told you to sit down and take your time. It did not rush. It did not play games. It was the kind of thing you ordered when you wanted to feel like an adult, even if you were still wearing platform shoes and listening to disco on cassette. Deli counters made legends, and this one was a heavy hitter. But if corned beef was too bold for your taste, there was always its milder cousin, the quiet, sweet-talking ham salad that somehow became a staple without anyone noticing. Peanut butter and honey sandwiches were the gentle cousin of the classic peanut butter and jelly, quieter, softer, and maybe a little sweeter. Instead of fruit preserves, this version replaced the tang with something more mellow, something that stuck to the roof of your mouth and made your fingers smell like golden syrup all afternoon. It was the sandwich you got when the jelly jar was empty, but love was still in stock. A simple swipe of peanut butter on one slice, a drizzle of honey on the other, and two halves pressed together until the honey oozed just enough to make you pause. These sandwiches were often packed quickly, folded into wax paper, and slightly crushed by the weight of textbooks. But that did not matter. If anything, it made them better. There was something old-fashioned about it, something kind. Peanut butter and honey tasted like slow mornings, kind grandparents, and meals that did not need to be fancy to be filling. Today, they are harder to find in school cafeterias and less likely to show up in lunchboxes full of brand-name snacks. Sometimes a quick and simple solution was needed when the month's budget was running low. Enter the cold hot dog slices and ketchup sandwich. This sandwich was made with leftover hot dogs, sliced cold, and slathered with ketchup between slices of bread. It wasn't fancy, but it was cheap, easy to make, and comforting. After payday, people might have splurged on hot dogs, but by the end of the week, those leftovers would be repurposed into this quick fix. The cold hot dog slices were nothing more than a vehicle for the ketchup, but when combined with bread, it made a satisfying snack or lunch. There wasn't much finesse to it, but it worked. It might not win any culinary awards, but when you've got limited resources, you make do with what you have. And while this sandwich may seem like an odd pairing, it's definitely one you'd want to try if you're in need of a last-minute meal. However, if you're craving something a little heartier, the next sandwich might just be what you're looking for. Creamed chipped beef on toast, or as anyone who ever served in the military will tell you, SOS. No, not a cry for help, though it looked like one. This was dried beef, shredded and stirred into a thick, milky white sauce with a bit of pepper and sometimes a touch of Worcestershire if you were fancy. Then it got spooned over toast, or biscuits, or whatever bread you had. It was a direct descendant of World War II rations. But by the 1970s, it had made its way into American homes, school cafeterias, and greasy spoon diners across the country. It was salty. It was creamy. It looked like a mistake, but somehow it kept getting made and loved. It was affordable, filling, and tasted better than it had any right to. Parents made it because it used cheap pantry ingredients. Diners served it with coffee refills. Kids ate it because they did not know any better, then grew up craving it again. It might not be pretty, but it is unforgettable. Still, not everything on this list is heavy. Some sandwiches were just simple, clever ways to use what was left on the breakfast table, and a little sweet on the side. If you've ever opened a can of sardines, you know it has a distinct, strong flavor, one that isn't for everyone. But during the Great Depression, a canned sardine and mayo sandwich was a common lunch that stretched a tight budget. Sardines were affordable, packed with protein, and could sit on the shelf for ages. They weren't just easy to find, they were easy to store. The fish was mashed up with mayonnaise, often with a little bit of onion for extra bite, then slathered between slices of bread. Though the flavor might have been an acquired taste, it was a filling meal that kept hunger at bay. And with the mayo adding creaminess, it was surprisingly comforting. While sardines may not be the most glamorous fish, they certainly played an important role in feeding families during tough times. You might think this sandwich is a strange mix, but it's actually a great way to get protein when the pantry's running low. And while sardines gave you that fishy flavor, it was about to get a little more sweet and creamy with the next sandwich on our list. You know it is serious when your childhood lunch starts with a loud sizzle. Fried bologna and mustard was never supposed to be a star. It was just something people made when they ran out of ideas or groceries. But it had that wild card charm. Thick-cut bologna, the kind with that red plastic skin you had to peel off, got tossed on a hot skillet until it puffed like a mini volcano. It would curl at the edges, crispy and brown, and just when you thought it was done, it would start to sing. Slap that onto a slice of Wonder Bread, squeeze on yellow mustard like you mean it, and top it with another slice. No lettuce, no tomato, no distractions. This was the sandwich that knew what it was. It smelled like school lunches and weekend trips to the lake. It was cheap, easy, and always hit the spot. Nobody was trying to impress anybody with this. But somehow, it never let you down. The meat might have been humble, but it had attitude, and the mustard made sure it got noticed. Now, if that one felt like a memory, wait until we talk about the sandwich that brought the diner straight to your house, griddle grease and all. The tuna and cream cheese sandwich was what your grandmother made when she wanted to feed you something fancy that was also suspiciously efficient. It was a relic from the 1940s, a time when mayonnaise was not the only binder in town and lemon juice felt like fine dining. Chilled tuna blended with cream cheese, a touch of citrus, and sometimes even crushed pecans or chopped celery. This sandwich wore a pressed napkin and gave off a whiff of Sunday brunch in the cafeteria. Kids either loved it or politely folded it back into the sandwich bag and focused on their chocolate milk instead. The bread was often buttered, soft, and crustless if someone was feeling generous. What made this sandwich stick in the mind was its smoothness, its unexpected tang, and how it seemed to signal that whoever packed your lunch had a plan. This was not a slapdash peanut butter job. This was intentional. Over time, tuna salad took the spotlight and cream cheese retreated to bagels and frosting. But in lunchboxes from another era, it played a surprisingly elegant role. When the budget was tight and even jam or jelly was out of reach, butter and sugar sandwiches came to the rescue. It was as simple as it sounds, a thick layer of butter spread on white bread, then topped with a generous sprinkle of sugar. For many, this became the go-to treat, especially during the Depression. It was sweet, satisfying, and didn't require much in terms of ingredients. The butter added richness, and the sugar gave it a touch of sweetness, making it feel like a real dessert, even if it was just a way to fill the stomach when times were tough. The best part? It was incredibly cheap to make, and you didn't have to go hunting for expensive ingredients. Families would often have this as a snack or even as a light dessert to end the day. Despite how simple it seems, there's something comforting about its humble sweetness. But as simple as butter and sugar may be, it's about to get even simpler with the next sandwich on our list. There is something dangerously comforting about mixing bacon grease with anything sweet, and that is exactly what bacon and apple butter on white bread was. You take crisp, salty bacon, still warm from the skillet, and press it into a slice of soft white bread that has been generously smeared with apple butter. That is it. No lettuce, no cheese, no rules. The combination was 100% homemade magic. It tasted like fall mornings, cast iron skillets, and someone's grandma telling you not to eat too fast. Apple butter gave it this rich, spiced flavor that clung to your mouth just long enough for the bacon to come crashing through. It was smoky. It was sweet. It was not trying to impress anyone. The real win here was in how it reused leftovers. If breakfast was done, and you had a few stray strips of bacon and a jar of apple butter on hand, this sandwich practically made itself. The kind of thing you whipped up while the coffee was still brewing. Maybe it never made it to a diner menu, but it made it to enough hearts to matter. And speaking of sandwiches that mattered, let us talk about the skyscraper of cold cuts that ruled every diner plate with a toothpick flag on top. The bologna and ketchup sandwich was the lunchroom underdog, a squishy, no-frills sandwich that somehow earned its place among childhood favorites. It was cheap, fast, and unapologetically plain. A slice or two of bologna, straight from the fridge, slapped onto soft sandwich bread, and dressed with a squirt of ketchup. That was it. No lettuce, no cheese, no frills. But in its simplicity was something oddly satisfying. The bologna was smooth and salty. The ketchup added tang and sweetness. The bread held it all together like a peace treaty between convenience and hunger. It showed up in mid-century lunchboxes packed by parents who needed to stretch a budget and feed a family. Kids would open their bags, see that red smear pressed through the plastic wrap, and know exactly what to expect. There was no surprise, and somehow that was comforting. It was a sandwich that never pretended to be more than it was, and maybe that is why it stuck around as long as it did. You rarely see them now, lost in a sea of organic spreads and artisanal fillings. The apple and mayo sandwich might seem like a strange combination, but it was a surprisingly popular choice during tough times when ingredients were scarce and creativity in the kitchen was key. Sliced apples, typically tart varieties, were paired with creamy mayonnaise between slices of bread. The sweetness of the apples contrasted with the rich, tangy mayo, creating a unique and unexpected flavor profile. It wasn't the type of sandwich you would find in any deli, but it became a go-to option for those looking for something quick and different. The apples, which were relatively inexpensive and often readily available, provided a bit of freshness and texture, while the mayo added a comforting creaminess that tied the whole thing together. The apple and mayo sandwich was especially popular during times of rationing or when fresh produce was hard to come by, offering a rare chance to enjoy a sweet, crunchy bite. While it wasn't a culinary masterpiece, it was a meal that worked with what was available, perfect for those on tight budgets. The sandwich wasn't fancy, but it had an undeniable charm. For many, it was an odd but delicious treat that felt like a luxury in a world where simple ingredients were used to make the most of every meal. And if you thought the apple and mayo sandwich was unexpected, just wait until the next sandwich, where another quirky combination takes center stage with a surprising flavor twist. If you were a regular at lunch counters in the 1970s, there was one cold cut that had a mysterious charm: pickle and pimento loaf. It had a look that was hard to ignore. A pale pink meat dotted with bright green pickle bits and tiny flecks of red pimento, like a mosaic made by someone who really loved sandwiches. It came sliced thin from behind the deli glass, slapped between white bread with a dab of mayonnaise, and wrapped in wax paper with a soda on the side. You did not question it. You just ate it. The flavor? Tangy, savory, and weirdly sweet, but not in a bad way. It had the texture of bologna, the bite of pickle, and the color scheme of a Christmas tree. For some reason, it vanished from most grocery shelves by the end of the decade. Maybe tastes changed, or maybe we just stopped putting pickles inside our meat. But back then, it was an easy go-to, a bit of fun, and a total conversation starter if you pulled it out during lunch break. Of course, if you thought that sandwich was messy looking, just wait until we dive into the one that was literally impossible to eat without getting sauce all over your hands and loving it. The lettuce sandwich was what you got when there was nothing else, and yet it became something more. Just 2 slices of bread and a few crisp leaves in between, maybe with a swipe of butter or a dusting of salt if someone was feeling generous. It was minimalist, it was plain, but in a strange way, it was also pure. In the early 20th century, when meat was a luxury and refrigeration was not guaranteed, the lettuce sandwich became a reliable go-to. It was light, refreshing, almost delicate in a time when food was anything but. Packed into school lunches, it was easy to make, hard to mess up, and always surprising in how much it satisfied. Kids might groan, but they still ate it, and maybe even liked it. Over time, it faded into punchlines and parody, replaced by protein-heavy, sauce-drenched monsters that took 3 napkins to conquer. But the lettuce sandwich was never trying to impress. It was just trying to get the job done, and sometimes that was enough. Elvis Presley wasn't the only one who loved a peanut butter and bacon sandwich. The combo of crispy, salty bacon and creamy, rich peanut butter created a high-protein, energy-packed sandwich that was a favorite for anyone in need of a quick and filling meal. It's easy to see why this sandwich caught on. It balanced savory and sweet, crunchy and creamy. The bacon gave it that satisfying crunch, while the peanut butter added a smooth richness. It wasn't the healthiest option, but when you're working with a tight budget and even tighter food supplies, it was a treat that gave you the energy to keep going. Not only was this a cheap meal, but it was also indulgent in a way that made you forget about how hard times really were. The combination of these two ingredients might have seemed strange, but it worked, and it worked well. But if you're craving something a little lighter, something that came before the age of bacon and peanut butter, the next sandwich on our list might be just what you need. You knew the Red Devil logo before you ever tasted it. That Underwood deviled ham can have a certain energy to it, bold, strange, and just a little too happy for what was inside. Still, one taste and you got it. Deviled ham salad was the low-key hero of school lunches and late-night sandwiches. It was creamy, salty, a little tangy, and just weird enough to make you wonder how it became so popular. Mix that canned meat paste with mayonnaise and relish, maybe a dash of mustard if you were daring, and you had a spread that knew how to work a slice of white bread. It was chilled, it was comforting, and it stuck to the roof of your mouth like a secret you could not wait to tell. This was the kind of sandwich you did not brag about, but secretly loved. And it was there for you, on road trips, in brown bags, and even at midnight when you could not sleep. It never looked fancy, but it never needed to. Deviled ham was a flavor bomb dressed up like a cold cut. But if you wanted something a little fresher, a little more deli style, then nothing hit quite like a stack of corned beef with a side of slaw and just enough spice to make you pay attention. Egg salad sandwiches were messy, mushy, and magical in the way only school lunch legends can be. Made from chopped hard-boiled eggs, mayonnaise, and a touch of mustard or seasoning, egg salad was the sandwich that smelled strong and stuck with you, literally and figuratively. It was packed between slices of soft bread and often left a faint imprint on the bag it came in. And yet, it was beloved. There was something comforting about it, something that felt homemade and humble. It was a meal you could trust. Some versions had bits of celery or onion, others kept it basic. But every egg salad sandwich came with a promise. You were going to be full, and you were going to remember it. Kids either cherished it or turned up their noses. There was no in-between. But for those who loved it, egg salad was the crown jewel of the lunchbox. Today, it is often replaced by cleaner, quieter options, tucked away in prepackaged containers at the back of the deli case. Now, bologna is not what you would call glamorous, but in the 1970s, someone took that humble meat and turned it into a straight-up miracle. Enter the bologna pizza sandwich. This was not a joke, it was genius. You start with a soft hamburger bun, maybe left over from the weekend cookout. On the bottom half, you lay down a slice of bologna, and if you are doing it right, you give it a quick sizzle in a frying pan so the edges curl up like a little meatball. Then you spoon on tomato sauce, canned, homemade, whatever you have, and top it with shredded mozzarella. After that, into the broiler it goes. What comes out is pure nostalgia with melted cheese dripping down the sides and the edges of the bologna just crispy enough to give it bite. It smelled like school lunch and after-school cartoons. This was a sandwich that did not care what anyone thought. It was pizza-inspired, budget-friendly, and full of attitude. A little greasy? Sure. A little weird? Absolutely. But no one ever forgot their first one. But if bologna in a broiler felt like a stretch, get ready for the canned spread that showed up in lunchboxes, picnic baskets, and every pantry with a shelf of shame, and somehow stayed beloved. Fluffer Nutters were the sugar bombs of childhood, smeared between slices of Wonder Bread like sticky little secrets. Made from peanut butter and marshmallow creme, this New England classic was as sweet as the recess bell and just as anticipated. No meat, no veggies, just a sugary swirl that glued your sandwich shut and made your fingers tacky with every bite. The texture was half the fun. Soft bread, gooey center, and that unmistakable stretch of marshmallow when you pulled the halves apart. They were a staple of elementary school lunch tables, always wrapped in plastic and slightly flattened from being stuffed into a backpack. Every bite tasted like skipping spelling tests and drawing dinosaurs in the margins of your notebook. The Fluffer Nutter was not subtle. It was not sophisticated, but it made you feel like you were getting away with something. Over time, it disappeared from school menus and fell out of fashion, replaced by yogurts and wraps and grown-up meals for tiny hands. The patty melt was not just a sandwich, it was a lifestyle. It belonged to truck stops, corner booths, and places where the waitress calls you hon. Start with a beef patty, not too thick, not too thin, grilled until the edges charred just enough. Then pile on caramelized onions so sweet they practically melt, and drop a couple of slices of Swiss cheese on top until it oozes over like lava. But the crown jewel? That rye bread, buttered and toasted right on the griddle. It soaked up everything. The beefy drippings, the onion sweetness, the crispy edges of the cheese. Every bite was a perfect mix of crunchy and gooey, salty and buttery. You were not just eating a sandwich, you were biting into pure diner energy. People had this at lunch and still talked about it at dinner. If your parents ever made this at home, you were one of the lucky ones. And if not, you probably still remember your first time trying one and realizing a sandwich could actually stop time. But not every sandwich needed to be hot off the grill. Some came cold, weirdly fancy, and straight from the pages of a church cookbook. Deviled ham sandwiches were not for the faint of heart. They came with a kick and a scent that announced their presence the moment you unwrapped the wax paper. Ground ham mixed with spicy mustard, paprika, and seasonings that somehow always felt a bit mischievous, packed between slices of white or rye bread. It was meat with an attitude. The kind of sandwich that either made your eyes light up or your nose crinkle in confusion. Popularized by the little Underwood cans, deviled ham was both a pantry staple and a school lunch wild card. It had bite, it had heat, and it came with just enough mystery to make you wonder what exactly deviled meant. These sandwiches were strong in taste, smell, and opinion. Some kids loved them. Others traded them instantly for chips or chocolate milk, but they always left an impression. Today, they are rarely seen, buried beneath layers of more polite sandwich options. But deviled ham was once a schoolyard standout, strange, spicy, and unforgettable. The club sandwich was never shy about making an entrance. This was the sandwich equivalent of wearing a tuxedo to a barbecue. Triple layered, cut diagonally, and always served with a cocktail toothpick jabbed right through the middle like a victory flag, the classic clubhouse was a masterclass in controlled chaos. You had turkey, ham, and bacon stacked with lettuce, tomato, and mayonnaise on white toast, then doubled up like it had something to prove. One bite, and you got the salty crunch of bacon, the cool snap of lettuce, the savory chew of ham, and that creamy mayo keeping everything glued together. It was tall. It was filling. It was an edible tower of American lunch pride. You could find it at diners, roadside motels, airport cafes, and your Aunt Linda's house on a Sunday afternoon. No one ever finished a club sandwich without looking like they'd just solved a puzzle. Picking it up was half the battle. Eating it cleanly? Impossible. But satisfying? Always. This was the sandwich you ordered when you wanted to feel like you were doing something important. And while this one wore its sandwich royalty crown proudly, the next one took a completely different route, turning cheap lunch meat into the closest thing we ever got to pizza on a bun. Pimento cheese sandwiches were a Southern love letter written in cheddar, mayonnaise, and bright red pimentos, served between soft white bread and packed with personality. This was not just a sandwich. It was a tradition, a ritual, and sometimes a dare for kids unfamiliar with its bold, tangy flavor. The cheese was sharp. The mayonnaise mellowed it out. The pimentos? They brought color, a hint of sweetness, and that unmistakable peppery kick. Pimento cheese was often whipped into a spread and slapped onto sandwich bread before being wrapped in wax paper and tossed into a lunchbox. It squished a little, stained the paper orange, and always felt like it had something to prove. Some kids swapped them, others hid them, but everyone remembered them. It was not the kind of sandwich that blended in, and that was the point. Over the years, it slipped out of school cafeterias and into specialty food menus, but back then, it was a staple that defined a region and a generation. It was homemade, it was messy, and it was honest. If breakfast and lunch ever had a baby, it would probably look like the Denver sandwich. And no, this has nothing to do with Colorado. It just happens to be the name that stuck. Picture this: chopped ham, bell peppers, and onions folded into a golden omelet, then squished between two slices of toasted white bread that crackle at the corners. It was the kind of meal that rolled straight off a diner griddle and onto your plate with no apologies. There was no syrup, no fancy garnish, just a sandwich that worked as hard as you did. People on their way to double shifts or cranking their station wagon heaters on winter mornings lived for this. It was breakfast without needing a plate, a fork, or even a break in your morning routine. The egg made it feel like something your mom would cook, while the sandwich form made it fast enough to eat one-handed while pumping gas. Somehow both comforting and chaotic, it became a regular in greasy spoons across the country. You could smell it before it even hit the table. And while the Denver sandwich was bold, our next one turned cheap meat into high art, or at least into something that sizzled like it mattered. You probably remember at least one of these from a downtown five and dime. The smell of the griddle and the rattle of stoneware behind the rail and the sound of the cook calling out a number to the woman with the order pad. Standing at a porcelain counter at noon next to a stranger, ordering the same lunch he ordered, paying a quarter to a cook who knew your face. That was a way of having a country, and we lost it slow enough that nobody noticed the date. Tell us below which counter your father ordered from, which sandwich your mother packed, and which sandwich your grandfather still asks for today. The afternoon, those 25 plates belonged to closed when the last counter did.